Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. We are from group 4. Now we will presented our material about analyzing learners. But before that, let us introduce ourselves. My name is Faradilan Nurkaunia as moderator and presenter, and my other partners are Dwi Maulidia Hapsari and Vivi Harmawati. Now let us begin to the first material, which will be presented by me. Analyzing learners. There is not much point to creating an instructional intervention that the intended audience cannot or will not use. Understanding the target audience of learners and determining in advance what they can and will do is an essential element of any instructional plan. In order to gain understanding of the target audience, one must conduct some form of preliminary evaluation of that group. Learner analysis is considered a critically important component of the instructional design process. Some aspects of learner analysis are easily quantifiable, and gathering this data is relatively simple matter. For example, it is not difficult to accurately determine physical characteristics such as age or gender. However, cultural and psychological information can be far more difficult to define accurately. Furthermore, the target audience itself, that is, the group of learners participating in the instruction, may vary considerably. While it is important to carefully consider the cultural and psychological aspects of the target audience, the numbers of variables involved in determining in advance precisely what will be culturally appropriate or psychologically optimal. Instruction are beyond our current control. The most thorough learner analysis is still a matter of taking a best guess at how the instruction should be designed to work efficiently and effectively for the target audience. The next material is about human needs. Before looking at the intended audience as a group of learners, it is a good idea to recognize them as a group of human beings. Basic human wants and needs must be addressed before any instructional intervention is attempted. While it is not the instructional designer's role to provide for each of these needs, it is in everyone's best interest to be at least familiar with how to gauge an individual or group's instructional readiness at this most essential level. An example of addressing the needs of the learner according to Maslow's hierarchy would be ensuring that learners are not particularly hungry when they participate in instruction. Once it has been established that the intended audience's needs are met to a point where they are ready to receive instruction, the designer must determine what content the learners are prepared for and how best to deliver that content to keep all participants active and interested. The next material is about captive audience or willing volunteers. For any instructional activity, participants can be divided into two categories: captive audiences or willing volunteers. Captive audiences are those people who receive a mandate to receive the instruction developed. For example, in the US, children are required to attend school, so they are a captive audience. While willing volunteers are participate in the instructional activity because they are motivated to do so without a mandate. Taking courses for pleasure or pursuing an advanced degree are most often instructional activities in which individuals choose to participate. It is important to distinguish between captive audiences and willing volunteers because the two groups can behave very differently toward the instruction presented. Motivation is a complicated subject that deserves continued study. Here we will discuss only its basic elements. Motivation can be essentially divided into two classes, intrinsic and extrinsic. If learners enjoy the instruction for its own sake and take pleasure in the activity, the motivation is said to be intrinsic. If learners participate in the instruction because they anticipate some reward beyond the instruction itself, the motivation is said to be extrinsic. So that's all for my explanation. The next material will be presented by Dwi Maulidia Hapsari.
Okay, the next material about the learning styles. Learning styles have been a hot topic among educators. The basic premise is that all individuals can approach learning challenges in a different way, but these approaches are not necessary idiosyncratics. They can be categorized into common style. In his work on educational information research, according to the learn style applicators, A problem arises if only one or few forms of presentation are used of interaction. For example, using only lecture because it the prefers the student with an auditory learning style. A quadly comfortable student who have differing learning style may not be getting as much on of interaction that others only one learning style. However, outwardness that learns confronts information deliberately should remain anyone responsible for designing interaction to profit a number of activities that simulate learns thinking in a variety of different way. Okay, the next universal design for education. Universal design for education or universal design for learning is an outgrowth of the universal design movements in particular taking in consideration that physical and intellectual ability, cultural and ethnic background, and social economic status can affect how the people perceive and process information. The universal design for education movement shakes from schematic environments and instructional context that provides equal access to the resources necessary for academic success. It is important to keep in mind that universal design for education is not only about the accommodating learners who are mentally or physically disabled, but it's also uh, analyzing learns, providing appropriate activities and challenges for gifted and the talent student. Universal design for education strives to provide appropriate interactional opportunities for all learners in way that goes beyond acting on activities after that interactional design in conflict. Okay, the next user centered design. Specialized in human computer interaction or HCA often discuss the need for a user centered design approach. The essential premise of the user-centered design is that learn or user analysis should be an ongoing activity throughout the process of designing and developing software, considering for the characteristic of the end user must be a part of the designer thinking from the beginning to end, or gathering analysis and specifying user person their text, the work environment and usability and user interface requirements and is essential for user control design is usability testing. An essential part of user-centered design is the usability testing. For simply usability testing in analysis method whereby offers where individual or group uses the product to complete as the of the first mistakes, the problems the subjects encounter in completing the text in kit where product reference to the actual. You User-centered design is the intended as way of the looking at the entire software development process in the terms of the end user instead of the terms of the programmer or the magazine. Keeping the end user in mind is the key of final analysis, and user-centered design approach is often used for communication interaction in general and learn analysis in particular.
Okay everyone, my name is Dwi Mudapsari. Here I will continue the presentation before and I will explain about popular approaches to analyzing learners. A number of respected instructional design scholars have addressed the issues of learner analysis. The elements that are common to and unique among these approaches are worth examining as you begin to develop your own learner analysis methodology. Robert F. Major is an author of instructional design texts that have been popular for decades. His approaches to learner analysis is a good place to start. Major at 1988 recommends the following procedure. The first is begin with the realization that the learner's analysis is working document, the document that will not be published or seen by anyone other than yourself and perhaps other member of the instructional design team. It's not necessary to organize the content into specific categories. The second is write down everything you think you know about the target audience. If it seems challenging to start it, begin with trigger a question like such as why are they taking this course, or do they want to be this course, and what training and experience do they have in relation to the subject matter. Analyze is describe the range of characteristics whenever possible. A few critically important things to do when conducting a learner analysis include take care to describe the learners as they are, not as you would like them to be. Major at 1988 is also recommends analyzing and articulating the following about target audience. He recommends about the age range, sex distribution, nature and range of educational background, reasons for attending this course, attitude about course attendance, typical hobbies and other spare time activities, reading abilities, and etc. A common approach to the problem of learner analysis is to ask the students themselves by generating and distributing a survey or questionnaire. However, Major asserts that questionnaire is not a useful source of information about the target audience. Next is about learner analysis procedure. So all the approaches described previously have one thing in common. They stress the need to gather information about the target audience in order to create instruction that is effective, efficient, and appealing for the specific group. All the approaches point out that some types of data are more useful than others in determining appropriate instruction, and recognize that even the most careful analysis is going to result in taking a best guess at the learner's skills and needs. Another element common to most learner analysis approaches is the recognition that members of any group are going to range in ability and interest. Keeping all this in mind, and the instructional designer must create the useful working document that describes the target audience. There are numerous possibilities for creating such as a document. Two of these possibilities are the first, a chart of learner characteristic data, and the second is the fictitious profile of the average number of the target audience. Okay, charting learner characteristic data is include the activity involves deciding what the data to gathering and creating a chart that illustrates the range of the learner's abilities. Meanwhile, the creating of a fictitious profile of the typical learners is another method of compiling the data gathered about the target audience is to create a fictitious profile of the typical member of the group. Okay, the last is about evaluating the success of learner analysis. After conducting a learner analysis, how do we know that the results of the analysis are accurate? How do we know that the data gathered have helped to create the best possible interaction? The only sure way to know is compare the learner analysis result with information on the students who participate in the interaction and listen to what students have to say about the interaction after they have completed it. This is an important summative evaluation activity that will help in determining the best course of the action for subsequent learner analysis. One way to evaluate the learner analysis during the design and development of the interaction or the part of the formative evaluation is to conduct a member check. A member check is the comparison method of evaluation. It means that it is the interpretation drawn from the data gathered as shared with a peer who has similar experience with developing interaction for a similar population. If the data and interpretation seems familiar and appropriate to the person with similar experience, it suggests that the learner analysis was successful. A member check is also can be conducted with someone from the target audience. Asking a member of the target audience is a profile developed seems appropriate. Essentially asking, is this you? It can be very helpful to determining the success of the analysis. Okay, that's all my explanation. Go back to the moderator. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's all for our explanation. I hope you'll understand the material we've explained. Thank you for your great attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.